Welcome, I'm Todd Raffel. If you are watching this video embedded somewhere, you can find this video housed at ere.net. I'm with ERE Media here at the ERE Expo in Hollywood, Florida. I'm with two people who both know quite a bit about jobs and hiring. Stephen Rothberg from collegerecruiter.com and Ted Daywalt from vetjobs.com. And we're talking about the speech that President Obama gave last night, as well as talking about, in general, what can be done to address the unemployment rate of 9.1%. The speech had in it a number of things from payroll tax relief, investments in schools, reducing corporate tax deductions, tax credit, unemployment benefits extension, tax credit for hiring veterans. Ted, on that last one, the tax credit for hiring veterans, being with vet jobs, would it be fair to say you're for that? It's a good idea?
I would definitely be for anything that helps get veterans hired. That's our purpose in life. Tax credits is always a nice political thing that members of Congress come out with from time to time, and the last veteran tax credit expired last December. A lot of people have been yelling, let's bring it back. A lot of people have been doing, different economists have been doing analysis of how effective tax credits really are. And we found that last year, of a workforce of close to 200 million, that only 800,000 tax credit applications were made, and over 80% of that was in the fast food industry, which are basically low-wage jobs. One of the big problems with tax credits is that it's not something the employer can spend. It's just a credit, and then when the Department of Labor gets involved, laying on all these requirements that they want to see for you to get your tax credit, literally in many cases, if you say getting an $8 an hour credit, but it's costing you $9 an hour to track it and report it, there's no sense in doing it, which is why so few are actually used every time we have a tax credit. But if that'll help get one veteran hired, I'm all for it.
Stephen, on the payroll tax, credit for hiring someone who's been unemployed for 6 months or more, credit for raising someone's pay, is that a good thing? Possible payroll, of course we don't know how these bills will be written and what will come out of them, but possible payroll tax credit on the employee side, so the employee maybe would pay less. Those all good things, or is the devil in the details? What do you think about all that?
I do think the devil's in the details, but I also think that the details are likely to be devilish. I can't imagine that the reduction in tax, whether it's on the employer side or on the employee side, is going to be enough that it's going to change behavior. So I think all it really does is drives up the deficit. And like Ted was saying, I think conceptually it sounds good. Theoretically, if you're reducing somebody's taxes, they're making more money, they're keeping more money, an employer theoretically is going to be more likely to hire people. Speaking from personal experience, we were hiring a web developer about a year and a half ago. And the program was in place then where if you hired somebody who was unemployed for, I think it was 6 months, something along those lines, that you got, I think it was their Social Security tax was waived for the rest of the year. And it's probably, I'm guessing this program is going to be quite similar to that. And we looked at it. And we would have loved to have hired somebody who was unemployed for 6 or more months. Mm-hmm. And we didn't, because we wanted to hire the best person. And the very small amount of money that we would have saved on that person, even just for the rest of the year, there's no way that was going to cause us to hire somebody who was unemployed for 6 months and wasn't as good of a candidate as the person that we did hire. We're going to hire the best person, even if it costs us $2,000 more a year.
What then, for you, Stephen, what would you do? There's probably no simple answer, but bringing down unemployment, give us maybe one thing you'd do.
I think that the biggest thing with unemployment right now is not the cost of employing somebody. And taxation is part of the cost of employing somebody. I think that, kind of like what Ted was saying, it sounds good, When the congressmen and women go back to their districts, they can say they took action, they did this, we're putting more money back in your pockets, we're helping you spend it hiring people or helping you save money for your family. But I think far more than taxation is certainty. If employers knew that the rules of the game today were going to stay the same as what they're going to be for for another year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, then we could adjust to it. It reminds me of the early 90s when Clinton came into the White House, and there was a lot of talk about the healthcare reform. And whether you liked it or whether you didn't like it, as an employer, you had to hate the talk because nobody knew what was going to happen. And once people knew what was going to happen, again, whether you liked it or you didn't like it, you could plan for it. And you knew that your competitors were going to be impacted in the same way as you were.
And that's maybe what's going on with healthcare. Is that some of the uncertainty? Is what is this healthcare thing coming, and what's in it, and what's that going to mean? I still haven't figured it out. That's what an employer is saying to herself or himself.
Absolutely. And you brought up the healthcare. That there's an analogy here. After the speech, I got on a conference call with a bunch of economists because I'm. In addition to working at vet jobs, I'm a consulting futurist with the Herman Group. And what we were knocking around was the president over 15 times said, we got to pass this right now, got to pass it right now, but he's not going to give details for 2 weeks. Well, if he really
but that's the future, so you should be in favor of it.
If he really had a plan, he should have presented that tonight, not wait for 2 weeks. Because the last time we passed something without knowing what was in it, we wound up with Obamacare and the 1099 issue and all these other problems.
Let's get back to jobs, and let me ask you, whoever wants to take this, and one thing I've heard is that one of the reasons why some of these things don't work, haven't been working so well, is that they don't address demand. Not so much certainty, but demand, and that the way to increase jobs would be to create some demand. Maybe some drilling, if there's a way to do it in an eco-friendly way. Maybe something else that would be creating, demand, creating new opportunities for investment in jobs. Something that's building.
You're absolutely correct. The bulk of the jobs are created in the small business arena, not the big AT&Ts and everything. In fact, if you took the Fortune 500 from 10 years ago to today, the number of total employees they hire or have working for them have gone down dramatically. New jobs are created in the small to mid-sized companies. And what they want to know is that there's going to be a market for their products or their services where they're being treated fairly. And right now they don't think they're being treated fairly. If you really wanted to get things turned around, not getting into the specifics of what the president proposed, but I didn't hear anything about reducing the bureaucracy. Back in the 60s, we barely had one person per 100 that worked for municipal, state, and federal governments. Today, you got something like 30 people. 30% of our workforce works for a government. That means a lot of taxes to pay for them.
Stephen, is this true? You think would this create more jobs if we reduced government somehow? Or somehow, is it that we just don't have enough people to buy products and services? Is it that we have too much debt, which is kind of what Ted is getting at? I mean, what is kind of the ultimate root problem here?
Well, there is
let me get that bullet.
You're looking for a silver bullet. There's no silver bullet.
Let me get that to Stephen also.
There's a short-term, long-term issue. In a lot of the debates that I've been seeing between different political leaders, Republicans, Democrats, independents, left, right, up, down. What a lot of them talk about in terms of saving money, increasing employment, decreasing unemployment, the same issue can cut both ways. So if we reduce bureaucracy, that directly leads to increased unemployment, which is an argument that a lot of Democrats have made, and they're correct. If you go out and slash the federal government by 20%, you're going to have 20% of the federal workforce unemployed tomorrow.
Sure.
That increases unemployment will go from 9.1 to 11, or whatever it would be.
Sure.
On the other hand, long term, if that by reducing federal, state, county, local, my feeling is a lot of times that money is better spent by private enterprise than by the federal government. But to just go and sort of say, we're going to cut 20% of federal agencies across the board, it doesn't make sense to me, because it's not that 20% of everybody in an agency is the problem. Some agencies are more of a problem than others. Some agencies are more productive than others. I would rather, even if the federal government is maintained at the same size as it is, I would rather reallocate those resources. For some agencies have done tremendous work in building efficiencies. They've taken a lot of their workers out of these big, massive buildings on the mall in DC, and they've moved them into home-based positions. You've got a lot of people in small towns, disabled people, et cetera, who are now employed in those areas. And I think the feds can do a lot more there. One of the things that I think the feds need to get more involved with than writing more regulations is building roads, connecting our communities through internet access, and mobile. When I look at Far East countries, South Korea, China, and I look at what competitive advantages they have over us, not today, but 5 years from now, it's not low wages.
No, it's not.
It's not education.
No, it's not.
Right? But it is electronic communication. It is having high-speed internet on your hip 24/7, and very often on both hips, because one phone is not productive enough for them. And if we could get
Talking about that. Hello.
if we could get high-speed internet access onto the hips of all of our workers, it would make our workforce so much more productive. It would reduce the cost of the goods. It would allow people to buy more goods.
Ted, let me ask you this, and then we're going to wrap up. Real briefly, then I'm going to give it to Stephen for a quick answer right after you. Where are we headed? Forget January, because that's not too long from now, February. Deep into next summer, fall, where are we headed? Are we headed for lower unemployment or higher? Or
I don't see us having lower unemployment. Economic theory tells you that in order to drop unemployment rate by 1%, you have to have 3.5% to 4% GDP growth for 12 months. That's been proven time and time again. For that to work, if we're going to drop unemployment from the current 9 down to, say, 7, we'd have to have nearly a 20% growth rate for the next 12 months, which would mean hyperinflation and all sorts of other problems. I don't see the unemployment rate going down for probably the next 4 to 5 years. And
Stephen?
It'll come down gradually.
Okay. Stephen, are you more optimistic or more pessimistic?
I'm slightly more optimistic, but let me add something. I think what's going to be the game changer for unemployment is going to be nothing that comes out of the Beltway. It's going to be nothing that comes out of City Hall, and it's going to be nothing that comes out of Fortune 500. I think that there is somebody out there who's probably 20 or 22 years old that nobody other than his family and his close friends know about right now, and he's got a game-changing, or she, probably more likely she.
Thank you, she.
It's probably more likely a she, because that's the bulk of the college students today, has a game-changing technology that's going to radically transform our cost of living, our way of living. And just like the internet in 93, 94, 95 led to huge productivity gains in just a few years, whatever this technology is that's out there, whether it's green energy or whatever, that's going to do it.
A perfect ending. Thanks, Ted Daywalt, Stephen Rothberg, both. Ted from VetJobs, Stephen from collegerecruiter.com. Thanks, and we will hope for the best for the rest of 2011 and going into 2012.
Thank you.